Right. Stand for the flag salute. I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This is a time when we allow the public to come up and present a topic from the floor. You're looking for 5 minutes for the topic if anybody wants to.
The race.
Yeah, it's a race. Well, my whole thing was about having Steve resign and remove him. Since that's happened, I guess most of what I was gonna say wasn't, except I would like to say publicly that I actually appreciate his action. I think he did best for this committee. And I'm glad that he did that, and I hope this committee can now move on, because you have lots of other important things to talk about. I thought that was surprising to me that he would do that, but I'm really happy that he did. And we'll hope that this commission has better things coming in the future. So, thanks.
Steve?
There's two Steve.
That's you.
Steve Chopat, legal 60 St. Helens Street. I've come here to describe some legal problems on transparency that I think you should be aware of since you will involve in much of the work you have to do. First, a little bit of background history. In 2018 summer, John Walsh, Mo Forster made a presentation to the CAG meeting in Portland about turning our lagoon, coolant pond / sewer treatment plant into a waste dump. It was pointed out a number of the legal problems that would present to us if there were failures or other by the people at CAG. December of 2018, there was a meeting in this room by the Better Business, I guess it's Business Oregon, about possible uses of the lagoon, because if it was a waste dump, one of the problems you have to do is haul very bad stuff away, which gives us loading equipment. And it was suggested by the state that we could use the loading equipment to load other things as a income to the city. Obviously, the state operations knew a lot about the technical details of what was planned, and this was not a public meeting. 2019, January, there was supposed to be a public meeting here describing what was going to happen turning the lagoon into a waste dump. Basically holding, or the main customer being toxic waste coming out of Portland Harbor. That meeting was canceled because some of the state people who were to be here were up in Seattle, Washington. Later on in the spring, May, there was another public meeting having to do with the waste dump. When this meeting was to be held in Portland at the Mo Forster offices, it was a public meeting scheduled 2 weeks. Friday afternoon, 4:30, it was announced that it was then an executive meeting in Portland next Tuesday, just above the 48-hour. The meeting took place in Portland at Mo Forster's headquarters. The people who were present with the city council, Jenny was part of that council at the time, Governor Wharton, Keith Locke. Genshaw was also there, as some of the other staff. Susan Nelson, Sue Nelson was there. The meeting was run by Mo Forster. There was a printout, very nice brochure of what they were talking about. There was a good lunch. Part of the meeting, there was broken into 3 groups of other designs, or what kind of designs you could do with the lagoon. Most of them were trails. The little group I was with, we decided it'd be nice to turn it into a marina. We had very good lunch, we had good sandwiches. On the way home from that meeting, I stopped off at the Spotlight and gave them the outline, actually the actual agenda, and pointed out, while this was supposed to be an executive meeting, it met none of the criteria of the state requirements for executive meeting. I got severely yelled at by the mayor at the next council meeting because the Spotlight reported this, and I applied, or I guess had my attorney apply to the ethics board to interview or review this meeting, and they found that the meeting was illegal. Our attorney was there, as well as Mobile Force's attorney was there.
1 minute. Left,
I'm gonna go longer than that.
right there.
I know, because there's gonna be 2 illegal meetings, and the city attorneys have not told the city about the lagoon. They were both illegal. I was censured because I brought this to the ethics board. I was taken to the ethics board by Matt Brown because I asked him about the monies that we were spending on the reservoir. They did not even hear that. They threw it out. Matt Brown, John's assistant, again took me to the ethics board because I asked a question about sewer lines and stormwater lines between 3rd and 4th Street. The ethics board found that the city was out of base. Stephen Tope was completely correct in what he did. So every time I was told that there were 16 people or 17 people by the city.
Your time. Limited to 5 minutes.
Well,
You can come back next month and go us.
no, you people are losing out on legality. I've had a similar problem with this before, and the federal court said the state of Oregon, was taking away Mr. Topaz's free speech privileges under the Constitution, which you've just done. Thank you very much.
Anyone else that would come for the? Not on, probably not on the agenda,
Not on the agenda. Thank you.
5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Carey. I just wanted to express my thanks to all of you. I have to resign today. I was hoping to make some positive changes in the city through the planning commission and the processes and laws we have. And the most important, I came to this town to relax and to enjoy myself and to get to know the people here. And I think one of the most important things for me personally is my relationships with people and my reputation. And it's become clear to me that some of the changes that we have tried to spearhead as a group that I have been at the forefront with have resulted in a lot of negative things. And I think it's just better at this time to step back and to go in a different direction as far as helping the public. This resolution 1986 to me is not tolerable. I raised that it was an unconstitutional statute, but 3 of the 5 councilors decided to go through with it. Having already been falsely accused of things, I just decided that I just would rather keep my reputation in place and then to continue to work on friendships, philanthropy, and working with our citizens and seeing what I can do to try and change the city in a positive direction from a different seat. I'm sorry that I've left you with the tough task of moving forward. And I can say that I've worked with, you're a brilliant group of people, and I'm honored to have been served with you. I'm honored to serve with Jenny Dimshow, Jacob Gretchen, Christina, and the rest of the city staff who have all been excellent all the time. But it's time to turn the page. So I wish all of you best of luck. And I'm happy to help with you in any way I can in the future. And you have my full support. But I think it's better for the city and for me personally, if I step away at this time. Never know how things may go in the future. I may ask to come back. But right now, it's best that we take a pause. So best of luck and bon chance.
Thank you for your contributions.
Thank you. Thank you. Take care.
Thank you for trying.
I did. Thanks.
Planning commission, it's last month. Anybody have any suggestions, corrections?
I move that we approve the minutes from May 9th, last month.
There was one kind of, before we wrote on. The wording was kind of weird, I thought, here, Rich, I didn't know Jacob Rich, lives in a house that burned down. Jacob shared where the property is located, he shared a home on his property, but burnt down. And was like, oh, I didn't know you shared a home there.
Yeah, that's what I get for my kindness.
What page is that?
I think just needed that or something, page 2. Shared a home on his property had burned down. Or something. I did.
With that clarification. We approve the minutes from May 2020.
For a second,
Second.
all in favor?
Saying I was absent.
Russ on line?
Hi, I am.
You just said aye.
Oh, okay,
I did.
I thought you were saying I am. Okay, thank you.
Just for the people watching who are astute in observation and notice that the minutes are not on the agenda, that was not intentional. It's been kind of quirky.
On the agenda. Planning commission meeting.
Yeah, we had to revise that had this back on.
That fell off or something?
I'm not sure what's going on with it, but
There they are, okay.
Okay, discussion items, architectural character review.
so this should be a quick one. So Crooked Creek reached out to me. As you remember, we reviewed architectural review and there was a number of things. And there's been some back and forth once they've uncovered things in the building, and Dave has been reaching out to me to say, hey, this is different enough. Should we bring it back to the commission? And the main one was the front door, and I felt like it was different enough. There was so much back and forth. We talked about it during an FYI a couple meetings ago. So the original door had a single light door with a kick plate. And then when he dug into the building, he found out that the original opening was actually wider than that. And so he wanted to widen it. So then I brought that revision to you, and it showed side lights with a half wooden, half light door and a kick plate. Jennifer, I think you sort of expressed a little bit of hesitation towards it. And then there were questions about if the side lights were vinyl or wood. Anyway, so this is his final revision. You can see it's a solid light door with a kick plate and 2 wooden side lights. Dave is also here. I'll just add that this is also going to be the same proposed door for the side door. So originally the side door was an overhead door. We revised it because of energy standards to a double door, or I'm sorry, French double door. And then his architect raised an issue that may cause challenges. So then he was like, well, let's just make it the same as the entry door. So before I approve this through the building permitting process, I just wanted to make sure that that was still consistent with the guidelines for your review. And also, if you have questions for Dave about how we ended up here, he's here.
Like to hear something or?
No, I think
It's okay.
fine.
Yeah, I think that now that we know it's not vinyl, that's my big concern.
All
Are
of
you
it.
gonna paint it or is it gonna be stained?
It will be wood. I'm not sure where vinyl ever came from. That's never been part of
It just
the
wasn't.
conversation.
No, if we don't ask, we don't know. I'm satisfied.
And the imagination just goes.
Worst case scenario.
When I asked, did you save the mural? Why do you say?
We'll probably save parts of it. It's not anything really significant. We'll save parts of it.
We're okay with it? Need more than just
No, I just wanted to make sure that when you guys saw this get installed, you want to be like, hey, what the heck, we approved something different. You know, it's a really visible building, so I just felt more comfortable bringing it to you one last time. Hopefully it's the final word to your doors. Okay, great. Thanks for being here.
coming in.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Had a lot of fun. You can stay. That's all right. Yeah, right.
Appreciate that extra step, Jenny.
Yeah, it was evolving too far and I'm like, we should.
Okay, it's 6:15. What about, this is deliberation.
This is continued deliberations, so we do need to, who wasn't here last time?
I was not.
Most of it on the video.
The Russes. And then, Hosky's gone now, so that doesn't matter. Okay, have you, both of you reviewed the minutes, the record, the video?
Yes,
Okay, and you feel like you've obtained enough information that you can make a same educated decision as those present at the hearing?
I do.
Okay, we do need to cover the ex parte contact stuff, just because some time has occurred. So I'll just do this.
Yeah, please,
Real
tell us
quick.
what's happened.
Yeah, so let's take care of the formalities, even though the appellant or
I
applicant.
see them on Zoom now. Yeah, Infinity Investments.
Oh, okay, good. Yeah, I thought he was gonna be here virtually. So does any member of the commission, since the last time we met, wish to declare an ex parte contact, conflict of interest, or bias in this matter? Okay. And then, does anyone from the audience want to object to the ability of a commissioner to make a fair decision?
And if you're on Zoom, just raise your hand or send me a chat. I'll just give him a second since you just got in. Could you repeat the question, Jacob?
Sure, yeah, I'll repeat the question I just asked. Does anyone from the audience, both physically and virtually, object to the ability of a commissioner to make a fair decision? And that includes the commissioners who were absent at the public hearing but have reviewed the record such they feel comfortable being a participant. All right. Okay, so we had the hearing, information was obtained, testimony was provided, there was some rebuttal, all that fun stuff. And the appellant requested the record to be left open. Last time we dealt with this, if you recall, was the Schlumberger partition where it was left open. So it's left open for initial written testimony, and then there's another week to respond to that, and then another week for final written argument by the applicant. We did get stuff in those 2 weeks that has been provided to you in your packets for this meeting, but the applicant, as opposed to the appellant, always is kind of nuanced in these kind of cases, did not provide any final written argument. So that's added to the record. The record is closed. Deliberations were continued from the meeting. They haven't occurred yet, but they were continued to this meeting, so you can digest everything in the record to help make a decision. And so kind of have this question of, do you deny it or do you approve it with conditions? I would say overall, it's not the best application. There was some paper napkin components to it. The approval criteria really weren't addressed very well. If you do deny it, you would want to make a finding that it has no impact on needed housing because it's still a developable lot. One of the key criteria has to do with minimal impact. And I think that's a good thing to hang your hat on if you're leaning towards denial. We do have a list of conditions. If you want to approve it. The one thing that I was thinking about from your perspective is, so we have this proposal to build a wall as high as 12 feet. Which the plan specifically calls out 12 feet on there along the property line. And we have some conditions originally about bringing it in a little bit. And those are included here. The discomfort I could see from your perspective is if you approve it with conditions, it's sort of with really dark shades on. Because you're approving it with conditions, but you really don't know what the proposal is going to be. So it's like you're welding that you're writing. And so that's, I don't know how you feel about that.
We've had these before where the leap was too great. From what we saw to what might work,
There's just so many revisions built into the conditions. It's
that we've sent people back to draw a new plan.
Yeah, so,
Closer to meeting the requirements. So we don't get surprised.
yeah, so that's kind of I think one thing to consider. The appellant, they made a lot of good points. Some weren't necessarily relevant. But some key ones were, why not use a stem wall or a similar alternative? There's some tree issues in there. If you wanted to consider conditions, we have to consider those. The lower tree wasn't captured as part of the subdivision when it was subdivided. For those of you who've been here for several years, I don't know why the surveyor didn't catch it. I think it was because it was on the lower part towards the corner. And it ended up being removed more recently in anticipation of this wall, which may or not be allowed. Whether or not you would want to ding them for that, considering the conditions, that's kind of a toss up. The tree that was on the cliff of the sensitive land given to the city, they claimed it just fell. But it sure looks like stuff was pushed over. And the tree, I'm not sure if I buy the whole, it just fell on its own.
Because like if you listen to arbor, if you're certain radiuses, you can touch the ground close to the tree before you compromise integrity. You don't actually even have to touch the trunk.
oh, the root zone.
Yeah, the root zone, I just watched, was just watching this old house and they were talking about different things. They're like, well, we're gonna have to choose a new place because it's within this diameter.
The classic thing with an office building in Beaverton was built called the Lone Oak office building, and around this beautiful big oak tree. And as soon as they finished building, the oak died.
That shouldn't be funny, but
The lone oak stump,
No oak. Oh, that's terrible.
yeah.
and that happens. Tree fell down there in front of O'Reilly's, probably because they compromised the root system. Crashed their signs.
The roots in this area don't go down because they're rocks, so they spread out.
Pave over it.
And they're only 4 inches deep, 6 inches deep, and so.
Yeah.
Parking lot, they cut those roots. at the time.
Yeah.
One thing that bothers me is the original application was this wall design. It wasn't engineered, no soil studies. We just used another plan off a lot or something.
It looked real haphazard, not fully vetted.
We have to come up with, I mean, seems to me we just pick it back and go, things have to be done. Come again with soils report and an engineered wall. I built those walls before. You can't build that wall like he shows that high without,
Some serious work.
yeah, and they're engineered blocks, but you gotta put them in right. I would say we need a whole new plan. I don't know what it does to this.
Well, if it's denied, they would start anew. At least they have,
The trail of breadcrumbs to draw a new plan.
So I asked him if he could do stone wall or some supports underneath the building. Like the appellant showed examples of, and basically they build on soil that's flat already. They want to do it like they always do it, and it's the cheapest way to do it, so. Really, they didn't want to do that, I said, no, do that. And build like we always do.
They have a plan already.
The town is bumpy.
Yeah.
You're gonna have to deal with some
I
bumps.
think it'll be a little more expensive house.
Cooking cutter.
Lose some money on it, that's all.
Yeah,
yeah, they don't necessarily need a 50-foot deep house, which is kind of the ones they've used on the other lots.
We don't need to spend time designing it for him,
no,
so.
that's his job.
One of the things that I noticed reading the appellate's response is, did the city or is it not relevant to deem the application complete? Seems like it's incomplete.
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we do have a deemed complete process. And in this case, I think we took it in and perhaps didn't put as much thought initially into it. And then once we issued that decision, it was like, oh, this is really kind of not ideal. And so we try to condition it to try to, okay, well, now you have to make it ideal. But the appellant brings up a good point. It really should have been more ideal up front. And I think, given the popcorn trail, this would help show them, okay, this was defunct. Here's some things to make it better. And certainly we would be a little more thorough in the deep complete process.
And so would there be no geotech report required, or would there be no geotech report? They mentioned that too, that there was no. The applicant was not able to produce a geotech report for the record.
Yeah,
It's like you can have
Commercially, you gotta do.
next week.
We would have probably required one a building permit for something this.
Well, for that wall, you need it.
Yeah.
They will not, the company that makes those blocks, they have to have soils report.
Is that the same thing as soils report and geotech?
Yeah.
It was-
I thought I recalled in watching the last meeting that there was a geotech report that they just didn't have on hand. Is that incorrect?
that's what they assumed. And then once, if you looked at the last submittal by the applicant, it talks about them. I can find it here and read it to you. It talks about them intending on getting it to us sometime. But yeah, they weren't able to produce it in time
For the back page,
for the record.
an email.
Yes, it is the last page. Thanks, Jacob. I have been in touch with the geotech. He is currently out of town until next week, but when I meet him next week, he is going to give me a report on the geo. Once I get that, I will forward it over to you. So what basically he was saying is, well, I can't get it to you now,
Last week.
but here's something is my intent to eventually get it to you. But if you end up denying it, we'll have that for the patient.
And that email was over 2 weeks ago? Yeah.
That was me, yeah.
You move that we deny this application. I don't know if you're gonna close the deliberations or how we do that.
Well, deliberations in whenever we.
Some findings.
And deliberations, those are all about you.
Well, Jacob gave us a sample. You started out with something, you made a statement that was. Something to hang a refusal, denial. on.
Oh, yeah, the minimum impact
Yeah,
standard.
I couldn't remember the exact words and I didn't wanna guess what the words.
So I mean, you could base it on that and deficient application materials.
What you're basing your motion on? I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
I
Aye.
Yeah. Yeah.
accepted motion.
The rest?
He said, I.
Fine,
said aye.
okay, thanks. Keep track of it. or sheriff's signature.
Yeah, you make that motion.
The motion.
So moved.
Second. Sheriff, second.
I'll second the motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 All right. Okay,
Jacob,
good.
Can I just have one question regarding that? We didn't discuss the penalty of the trees, the financial penalty of the trees.
Yeah, it's a good point, because this is still an enforcement issue. And that's how it started out. So I guess we would address that with a building permit or a future land use decision on the site, right? It's our only mechanism for getting movement.
Yeah, I mean, building on some portion of steep slope, probably inevitable, so there'll be another permit where we can consider these things.
The same with the bill on the city property.
Okay. Any other questions from? Good. All right, planning direct decisions, anybody have any of those? Pretty simple.
No.
The planning department activity report.
See, I did not review my report in advance, but there was a lot going on in May in that there were 5 first reading ordinances on the last council meeting. Means there was a lot going on in May, and that may be a record. They were all planning related. 3 of them were annexations. One of them was the street name thing. Wapama Way ended up winning that exercise, and then the 3115 ordinance as well.
Which street is that? The new streets.
The one just over here.
Between Tualatin and Cowlitz. It's a new mid-block crossing.
Yeah.
Next to Salisbury.
Yeah. What's the new name? What's that
Wapama.
name?
Wapama. Way. It was one that I think we talked about when it was before you. And it ended up staying in the potential list for the council, and we had a lot of
Well, not bad.
public outreach and stuff, and Twilight ended up had more votes.
Probably.
But the feeling was there was more out of town votes for that. And so the council,
one might say that you probably should put things out for polls if you're not gonna listen to them. Just, if you're gonna let people vote, you shouldn't qualify votes. Just speaking from a democratic standpoint, it's like, the votes are the votes. And it's like, if you're gonna just do it to see if it agreed with you and then throw it out, that's kind
Just
of.
looking at you, counts.
No, I know.
you advocated for Twilight though, didn't you?
It doesn't matter who it is, I'm just saying that you probably, I never knew about the polls, I don't follow meetings, but I know when they put it out for polls, she goes, me, I love my polls. And I thought you might want to watch putting things out for polls if you're not gonna listen to them. And it just shows you how popular Twilight still is. With people that bring, I don't know how many millions of dollars to this community, it's still pretty popular. But, it doesn't matter to me, never mind, but I just thought that's just for transparency and honesty and stuff, we probably should put stuff up to vote for that color.
The poll was not my idea.
I know that, I was talked about it.
I liked all of the local old. The names that defined the city at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a whatever, it's just a thing, if you're gonna put stuff out to vote, be careful about doing public polls for that reason. If you wanna only get local residents, maybe not using social media. But we're about inviting people here, we're not a closed community. We are. What else we got?
Here's what Twilight is.
Twilight is still the time of the day,
Yeah, but
that's all it is.
it's not Twilight Avenue.
Old
Still-
Millway would have been great if it would have
Which
stuck.
one?
Old Millway was the.
Yeah, it's like-
It would have stuck, it just couldn't.
Yeah.
Canvas Way, we don't want to talk about that. We don't get Canvas left. So-
One An update, we had our open house for the First and St. Helens intersection, obviously you saw the traffic control.
How long is it gonna be like that?
So this is the first phase of 4 or 3. It's not a project I'm managing, so all of this is just relaying information from the engineering team. They said at least until the end of the year for this first phase.
I was just trying to figure out, cause I'm in the parade, I'm like, well, how's that gonna work?
Yeah.
What's happening there?
So the intersection's being completely redone. It's gonna be a concrete intersection.
With
Gonna
those
be
bump outs and stuff.
curb extensions, shorter crossings, it's gonna become a 4-way stop. There's gonna be new street lighting,
It's all been coming for a while.
gateway treatment.
Growth hurts for a while.
What was that?
And the growth hurts for a while, but it's gonna be great.
Yeah, and this is the first intersection, the next intersection will be Cowlitz. And Tualatin, I mean, they're all getting kind of the same, a treatment.
So who's organizing managing the build?
The engineering team, so Mohammed's the project manager, and then Sharon and Alex are both support staff under him.
Oh, okay.
Assisting, it's a huge project,
So I won't say bad things about you when I leave here. It's not Jenny's project, it's not our problem.
Yeah,
So
I just
good.
wanted to say we had an open house, 4 planning commissioners were there, interestingly, no council showed.
I didn't know that we had a meeting.
It was just an open house.
I didn't know there was an open house.
There's some flyers on the back. If you sign up for our waterfront newsletter, you'll get notified about traffic control plans and all.
I'm on Lisa and Kathy's list, so I get all the Lisa and Kathy stuff, but I don't get you guys' stuff.
I highly recommend, I think we have over 400 subscribers just to the waterfront newsletter alone. But you'll get notified of.
I just,
It's helpful, I'm on that.
Signing up.
We send them out like every 2 weeks of updates on construction.
Because people still ask me stuff, even though I'm not on council anymore, people still ask.
Sign up, St. Helens, Oregon.com/waterfront.
So I mean, I did that. I thought I did it one time, a long time ago, when we were doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
I did have a question about that meeting, not sure what time was appropriate to bring it up, and it was more of County Commissioner Garrett's statements.
Oh, for John Gum.
He mentioned that they were gonna take out the wall in the back, and
Oh.
why haven't we heard about that?
I think they're reconstructing that retaining wall, so it's not so steep in the back. That's been part of their parking lot plans.
I haven't seen that, because my understanding through the Historical Society is that all that rock was put in by WPA,
Oh, interesting.
and unfortunately now it's graffiti, but.
Huh.
Well, I hadn't heard that part of it, so.
You're talking about the wall, like,
Maybe just the small wall around the front, I need to.
no, not that
I
wall.
know they're not taking that, but
Oh.
it seems like that moves right into that back wall. Rock.
I think we're talking about different walls. I know what you're talking about, because that's on the
Directly behind, between the,
Second Street side or Third Street side.
it's the parking lot side.
Yes,
Yeah.
yeah, that's not, I don't think that wall's being altered. It's the wall
Instead it was a leaning wall, that's it, but.
straight out the back door. You walk and then there's a big wall. Yes, yeah, thank you. That's the wall.
So this, back to this intersection, so it'll be designed with the streets plan. Some time ago. With the same bump outs and.
Oh, with the riverfront connector
Yeah,
plan?
yeah.
Yep.
Good.
Yeah.
The first of that,
Super painful.
instead of forcing people to do it, they develop stuff, so somebody's doing.
We're also
something.
hoping to underground utilities in that intersection, which I think is making engineering pull their hair out with the coordination among all of the aerial utility providers.
So they can hold down and put it in the.
Yes.
ground.
Yeah.
No.
That's what made the.
We're tearing up the intersection, so you might as well underground utilities now,
No kidding.
as opposed to after.
Although not everybody does. Lyman for 40 some odd years, and we went down to, we're on a trip, and he's like, oh my word, he goes, those cables are still in the air on both sides of the road and underneath the road. And he's like, this is crazy that they haven't done that, and then he goes, but it's no money,
It's very expensive.
it's no money, well, and it was Mount Angel, so historic stuff,
Mhm.
so I'm sure they don't even go there.
Yeah.
But, cool.
Okay, we do have an item that was added. Proactive, item, architectural standards.
Yeah, so I at least wanted to start priming your thoughts now that we're kind of done with the last thing. And I was gonna talk about this at the joint meeting, but that's been canceled. Actually, can we talk about that really fast? So I was thinking about this. I sent an email about, canceling June perpetually, but thinking about it over the weekend. I think it's good to have them on the calendar. Because there could be a June where we have where timeliness is paramount. So if they're on the calendar, it'll help give us a place when timeliness makes sense. But sometimes because of other things going on, it doesn't make sense. And I just, are you okay if they get canceled in those circumstances like June did? Now, I know there wasn't any consultation with the planning commission about this one. The council is just like, man, 4th of July, Citizens Day, all this stuff going on. There's just too much. But I at least want to kind of have a quick conversation on that. It's, we don't want to have sour grapes over the council meeting, so I just make sure we're on the same page. But it's a good example is the council always councils the first meeting in July because July 4th is in close proximity. And although they haven't done it for several years now, just because there's too much going on, for several years, they also canceled the first meeting in August. Planning Commission, there was a few years there where just happens that November, we didn't have anything going on, the commission was okay canceling. So it's not a new concept, but I know these joint meetings were important as far as having that dialogue, so I wanted to make sure that dialogue continued. And just my idea is based on this dialogue and go back to the council and saying, well, here's the thought process. So anyways, thoughts on that?
It does seem like if it's a joint meeting, we should jointly counsel it, not unilaterally counsel it. Boy, one party. Doesn't make sense.
Well,
There should be more upfront communication on.
it made sense to me, given that we had ended one project and we hadn't really started the next project. And just how busy the calendar has been, it made sense. And that's why I called you last week and it's like, this seems like it's really creeping up on me as like there's no time. And you're like, I think it's gonna get put off. And so you and I had that conversation.
But I felt like it was gonna be the long-term project, so I was disappointed in that, but I did feel like. We possibly needed a mediator, a moderator in the meeting, but. Hopefully the relationship can go on and. From here.
Oh, here it be, yes.
Any other thoughts? Okay. So my intent for the joint meeting was to start priming the next item, that's architectural standards. And I didn't, the last document I prepared was from February. Haven't really updated that, but I wanted to, as you start thinking about this, talk about the different ways we can do it generally to get you thinking. So one way we could do it is by zoning district. So you have a certain zoning district and that district has those standards. And that's something that we have now, the Riverfront District, that's what the architectural standards apply to as well. Another example that is potential, but not currently in effect, would be standards for the Holton District. That would be another example specific to a zoning district. So that's one way to do it, existing zoning districts. Another way to do it is an overlay zone. So you have your zoning districts, but then you have this other layer, and that could cross different zoning districts and stuff like that. And that would be architectural standards or something like that, that applies to that geographic area. We did have an example like that in St. Helens, which wasn't used, but it was the predecessor to the Riverfront District. That's when we had the waterfront redevelopment overlay district. For some of you who've been around here for a long time and remember that. Some of you may remember us just getting rid of it back in 2017. But it survived from 2017. A historic district is another example of that. You know, it's an area that has its own set of guidelines. So overlay district, that's another way you can tackle it. Individual historic landmark listing. We have a good, fairly recent example of including a new property on that. And that gets you more into the historic preservation side of things, but it's still, you know, it's preserving architecture that you may feel is important. And then another example is by the use type. So if you wanted to have certain standards that apply to multi-dwelling structures, 3 or more dwelling units, like, you know, each window shall be bordered by a minimum 2-inch wide trim or something like that. So it could be by use type. Now, when we get into there, if it's residential, the standards need to be clear and objective. We need to try to avoid subjectivity. And then when we're talking about single family dwellings and duplexes, we need to be particularly careful because state law says, you know, we have to allow manufactured homes and modular homes anywhere a single family dwelling is allowed, except for historic districts. Historic districts give you that extra, that's the one place where it gives you that extra coverage. But you don't want to create a standard that excludes manufactured home or modular homes necessarily. So that's why I say there's the particular care. In all cases, we would be amending our code, and so there would be notice to the state, measure 56 notice, and what that is when you're creating new rules which could quote unquote impact the value of the property. We're supposed to provide notice in advance. You may remember us doing that for the duplex rules a couple of years ago. We had pretty mass mailings. This was very widespread. Now for the historic district, it's also a goal 5 process. So it's a, you know, higher hill to climb. And then there's also consent considerations. So for individual historic listings, you have to have consent. You can't impose it. Well, we just want you to do this. Screw it if you don't like it. You can't do that. When I was studying this in February, and what I didn't get to, it's been a burning question since, is if we create an historic district, does that consent apply as well? Because that could be a lot of consent.
You already have a historic district that's much wider than we monitor, so why couldn't we take the boundaries of what we use in the plaza area, commercial area, and actually extend the architectural standards to the entire historic district?
We could potentially.
84 applications. I believe in 84.
Yeah, I think, you know, one thing about the historic district is you pointed out it's kind of a weird boundary. And if the intent is to preserve character, why would you have these?
Right, the whole district is weird to me because it was kind of arbitrarily chosen and not necessarily.
Yeah, it's totally arbitrary. In fact, I remember Skip saying that. Well, it's arbitrary.
And so, it's like you pick this and you pick the Bolton district, then there's some interesting properties within Midtown. I mean, it's just like,
And
it's like baby steps would be to expand what we look at.
And clustered with the little infill lots as people are splitting off their backyards and really not lovely things are being built next to 100-year-old homes. And I feel like that affects the property value on both sides. Right now, there's nothing on the books to stop that from
Well,
happening.
now we have to allow it with the new.
Right, but not if it's a historic district.
Yeah, if it's so we have an historic district.
So the properties that are within the district, but not part of the overlay or whatever I'm sorry, I don't remember what it's called.
I can pull up the historic district map. That'll help.
It's just there's a bunch of those single lots that are getting built up just as fast as they can go. Like another utility trucks out there with the backhoe. It's like,
Well, and all the info lots are pretty much going away, so now it's gonna start being.
So what Jennifer's saying is here's areas outside of the riverfront district, which is the hatching here, that are not subject to the riverfront district guidelines, the architectural guidelines.
Right, and that just makes, I would like to see it be all of the blue.
So the hatching is riverfront district zoning.
Okay, okay.
The things in color are within the
Historic
historic district, which was set in 1984.
And that district, you know, thinking about this over the years, and especially more recently. I don't think this boundary, it was intended to inventory, not necessarily regulate. And so is it the optimum boundary from a regulation standpoint, or well, that's the boundary, we're just gonna try to go with that. One thing about using the standards we have now is within the riverfront district, your single family dwelling duplex is just not a possible use. Unless it's an historic landmark, in which case it gets put into a different category. So if we were to use that and expand into some of these other areas, we would need to do something in the code or in the standards that helps us deal with single family dwellings and duplexes.
The other thing that I don't necessarily love about that suggestion is the riverfront district architectural guidelines are intended for commercial ground floor, residential above, and they don't work so well when you start applying them to just single family dwellings, which is the majority of the historic
I
district.
wasn't necessarily suggesting the same standard, I'm just saying that instead of us, whatever the. Method is to it, that the baby step is to have anybody making any changes or building anything to.
There's a lot of really
First
beautiful
encompass
homes
the
that
district.
people drive by that could disappear tomorrow because they're not included. And I mean, I've heard people talk about historic homes that have been torn down because there were no rules. It
Historic,
wasn't on the register or that kind of thing.
historic preservation is different than architectural guidelines for residential development, just making that distinction.
Yeah, so these are the inventory, the red or historic buildings or something that's significant. There's other properties within that aren't historic. That could be built in historic character or something like that. I mean, that's the point of an architectural standard, right? So. Historic district may not be an appropriate boundary, but be expanded to what we want the historic district to be.
Yeah, well, and it also, I've heard conversation about. Blanketing the entire city, I don't know that that's reasonable.
Well, Main Street kind of thing. I think about those. Just things that you're like, that house that faces the old church on Sixth and Columbia. And I'm sure that's in the inventory. I'm thinking it's in the inventory, but you think about those old houses like those that are the stone houses that are in town, that not all of them are on the registry.
There are very few, I mean, what is there, 16?
Yeah.
I think it's like 23, I just looked at it, it's under 30.
Yeah.
And that's the those are the little black symbols here, the
Oh,
designated landmarks. Those are,
designated landmark.
these extend outside of the historic district, there are designated landmarks. In whole,
Right,
And since 1984, the only one that's been added is the Italianate cottage that we
right.
added in the last few years. So,
The youth council drove around and looked at every single building on the list and took pictures of everything on the list.
did they?
I
Yeah,
forgot,
we did all that.
Oh,
I had pictures of all that stuff and then I didn't get reelected and youth council went away.
Oh, I see.
So, but as a result, I've seen every building. So I think of, there's a lot of buildings that were not on those, not in those photos. And I think about, you know, when we have things that go to get built, we have no mechanism to control what kind of things get built there right now, nothing. And so if God forbid something burns down, somebody could put a Walmart there or put a whatever.
Suggesting that we need a second proactive item that is specifically for historic preservation.
well, I think,
You think about your goals.
yeah,
You're talking about infill development in certain areas that are sensitive. That's one thing, but then you're talking about destruction of existing,
Yeah.
different.
I was, I went and actually drove streets to see what infill was left that hadn't had a townhome thrown up in.
Did you have anything targeted?
Now it's like,
Well, no, I just, what I'm speaking to is not old or new, it's the charm of the community. And so you would hope when you love a community, you grow up there and your kids grow up there and your grandparents were there. 20 years from now, you want it to not look. You want to be able to tell the difference between that and some other suburb. It's like, I want it to look like my town. It doesn't mean it has to be old or new, it just means architectural standards, so you have some kind of path. Right now, there is no path, it's whatever people decide to put there.
I think about Vancouver, Canada. They allowed people to immigrate if they had a value of $2 million or whatever it was, okay? And they would go into these neighborhoods, up into little teeny homes, clear out the little teeny home and build as far to the buffers as they could. Some 2-story pink brick monstrosity, so their whole extended family could come and live there and just ruin the character of those neighborhoods. Ugly.
well, there's a fine line too, because there's some very significant and interesting mid-century modern houses in this community.
Right, and it's the character of the community, whether it be 50 years old or 150 years old.
So we need to decide
And
what.
we have no legs or no code, no street standards, no architectural review to even impose any of that. That's just wishful thinking.
There are categories for ages of houses.
I just don't want it to be like, you have to build a bungalow. Because that's not.
No, but we've had the wording of to match the charm and character of the neighborhood, but there is no architectural review. So we just trust them to do that and we see the results of that.
Well, matching characters, is that fair and objective? I mean, that's so.
That's all, it's all interpretive.
Yeah, and that's not gonna fly for.
Right. I mean, we see how that works and that doesn't work. So we have more work to do apparently.
Well, I think. You know, thinking about when the next joint meeting is, it would be good. You know, depending how the meetings, the next few meetings go, to at least. Maybe have a general scope. Or, you know, what are your goals? What are the priority areas? What do you want to accomplish? That would be a good discussion with the council. And then we're gonna be getting into fall, have more time to work on it. After that discussion, just, I think that's kind of the natural progression, given the
Can trees happen there too?
Jennifer, didn't you prepare a presentation when we were first talking about this? And it had some goals and priorities. I
don't recall.
Yeah, but I remember you gave a presentation. So maybe revisiting that and knowing what Jacob just talked about now, there's kind of different approaches, maybe you can tweak that presentation.
When I know
That
the
doesn't,
last proactive item, I said, when it got so huge and, I'm spending too much time on this. 70 hours a week, whatever. And I thought, well, maybe your question is too big. So it's like a master's student that I had in my master's class, program. It'd been 6 years trying to get his 2-year master's. He had too big a question.
Yeah.
He didn't narrow it down. So make sure it's tackle.
I've been researching some other districts and other cities. Seems like maybe Oregon City has done a lot well.
Yeah.
And so, that's kind of my first direction, is to not reinvent the wheel necessarily and go in a direction that other cities have done successfully, and said it in an email, but I want to make it clear that we want to really cooperate with city council and
The adversarial.
yeah, adversarial, yeah. Oh, that's important. And I hope it's open dialogue back and forth. I think maybe neither of us know what we don't know yet. So either this commission or the city council, we don't know. So hopefully they'll take some direction from us, but I'm certainly not gonna shove it down anybody's throat.
What you're saying, we can set it up by the zoning district, with these special zoning districts, not 5 or 7 or.
Yeah, it would, I mean, generally, that's probably what you would look at is the unique ones. But you know, if you're like, well, multi-family structures should have this, then that would be, you know, citywide, regardless of zoning district. And there's no reason we couldn't look at both, but you know, it depends on your priorities and stuff. And part of the discussion with the council, you know, I'm guessing it'll be pretty high level for general thought, but some of it is to help plant seeds of thought for them. So then when it comes back 3, 6 months later, 9 months later, however, they're like, oh yeah, I remember talking about that. And it's just kind of that progression of thought and cooperation to ultimately reach what we all hope for.
I really see us giving guidance. I mean, that's been the goal of the subcommittee is to give guidance.
Jennifer, in your research of other communities, pay attention to when it's just applying to residential districts as opposed to like a mixed use, because I think we have the Riverfront District guidelines that are working, the architectural standards are working.
I think they are.
So we don't need other examples of like mixed use guidelines that are intended for downtowns, because I think we have that. I'd be curious, I know Portland has a lot of different historic residential districts and their rules are very strict. And so I'm curious how they do that too.
I looked at buying a house a number of years ago and Fairview did a planned community, a big expansion that involved a new grade school. And they made the decision to do front doors front, garages couldn't be closer to the street than your front door. Front doors couldn't be on the side, and it was just trying to bring community back. And so a porch not smaller than this, front door had to be toward the street, those kinds of things. And when you walk through that neighborhood, it was all brand new subdivision, but it looked like it had been there, and now it's been 20 years and all the trees have grown. And it's like somebody had the forethought to plan this so it would look like a neighborhood 30 years from now.
So the neighborhood we lived in South Carolina was built that way about 20 years ago. And it's got like 8 different parks, not big parks, but just like community areas for different
Green
areas.
spaces.
I'm doing it, but yeah, they had all the certain porch sizes and everything that.
There's so many houses with the front doors hidden and the garages are all to the street and there's no front yard. And there's just a lot of those basic things. That there's no green in front of the house, the front doors on the side of the house, and it really changes the character of the building. And that way it could be a manufactured home, it could be a modular home. But if every house down the street, they have front doors. And houses that build in the neighborhood need to have a front door. But those are pretty simple and pretty meetable, they're not preposterous.
Clear and objective.
Yeah, I mean, they're not like, oh, we want you to come in here with double hung wooden windows. Scare people. But I mean, that way it would create a community where people sit on their front porch and they know the people that live across the street. And that's the charm that makes people want to grow up in a small town. I mean, we can get there, Jennifer, with all of her real estate knowledge and travels.
Lord knows, almost coming up on 30 years.
A long time to do one job.
It was a long time to do one job.
So now that we have time to think about other things, you can kind of start, you know, chewing on that and come back and
Suggestions.
some more. And do you want that February memo to be in the packets next time? Do you still have a copy of that? Do you even remember it?
Yeah, but saved at home.
I think it should be included.
Yeah, include it.
Okay.
I must have saved, but.
That would be nice.
Yeah, we'll add that.
You can recycle it. I'm just kidding.
I think it was included when there was a really full agenda.
Yeah,
It was after 3115 at a really long meeting.
Yeah, I just hope that
A lot of meetings.
we are still. With or without Commissioner Toski, a proactive planning commission.
Yeah, I mean,
So I hope we still achieve some of those goals.
Jacob can I mean, when I was on city council, I talked about street standards and I brought it up in council meeting, got shut down in about 3 seconds. And that was back when Randy Peterson was the mayor, and it was like, nope, not doing that. And Jacob and I talked about it, and lots of other communities were doing it. So I mean, it's definitely been out there for a while, and Russ has talked about it before. So it's not new.
But the conversations we had over the years probably is hours combined.
Right.
Because you're on council and sitting here so long.
Right. Well, because we watched so many buildings get built that were like, oh my God, nothing we can do.
Yeah.
And I go, but did you see this one? He goes, I saw it, Jenny. Nothing we could do. Cause I was always telling him this one on this corner. He's like, no. We couldn't stop that from happening.
Are controlling the Dan Hatfields of the world.
I wasn't gonna name people on the record.
Well, I mean, what you see.
Well, it's just frustrating. I feel for developers, of course, because they're investing their money, they're taking a big risk, but I also feel for the people that have lived in a house for 40 years. That go, why did that just happen next door? And granted, everybody has the right to do with what the property, what they want. But houses are around for more than a blink of an eye.
Yeah, they can be removed.
Speaking of construction, congratulations on your grant award.
Yeah, we got the
That's
grant.
huge.
Oh, you did?
Street grant, so.
So did Crooked Creek,
Oh,
which they didn't mention. We got 2.
Yeah, they doubled it up.
I had a question for you since you brought it up. What are you doing with the kind of exterior are you doing on your building?
Just gonna leave it plywood.
Would be,
211.
small windows and plywood and.
We'll call that a DH.
Yeah.
No, I binge watched, a lot of those home improvement shows.
It's gonna be,
And to think about it.
the street level floor. Elevation will be, basalt stone. And then the upper one will be a lap site.
Yeah, everybody's talked about that location as being pivotal. As could really bring the town together, could really bring life to Midtown and really change the. You know, that was the whole, when we did the triangle. The Mount Baker there, that used to be the little school project. When we redid that and the garden club made it so beautiful, we thought, you know, now somebody could just develop that corner. Make it super cool, it could change the face of uptown.
Well, the architecture is gonna be good, and also the community that I'm creating is gonna be good. And you've got, one reason I picked that site is you've got the grocery store across the street. You've got a swimming pool a block away.
Cool.
You've got the fire department, you got the school, you got the event center over there, so. That's the kind of stuff that should be filled in and utilized.
Yeah.
But
When it's just not vacant, the vacant spaces need to be developed in a nice way, and I'm just really impressed so far.
unfortunately, it's been a big toll financially because the projects was submitted back in 2018. So I told the city manager that he's got crappy customer service in the building department. Not planning, these guys, you get through these guys, they're helpful and they direct you and make a decision, and it's great. I mean, that's really a positive part of the city, but no, it's just been a really bad experience, so
That's too bad.
if I do it again, I don't know.
Now, do you own the house behind you or next to you? It used to be the tea shop?
I asked to purchase that lot there. It sold. And they wanted to sell it to me, and I told them that it's not buildable, they can't build on it without taking that house down.
Oh,
But they didn't want to sell it, so that's fine.
so what's in the house?
It just, it's a,
Is it a business?
you know, they live upstairs and there's a business downstairs now. It's, I think of, salon or something.
Oh, okay.
Let's see.
Well, good hearing. Anyways, I was just curious, that area gets a lot of attention, and when I see your vehicle there and see you there, it's like, he's not, doesn't have time to chat, I'll have to save it.
I'll give you a tour, yeah. It's a little rough right now. We'll wait till we're gonna bring water lines in next week.
I love how you did it. Stepped, it looks really cool.
What's that? Oh, yeah.
So the roof's on.
Oh, yeah. No, the fire suppression system's going in now, plumbing's halfway done. Storage spaces underneath are all finished.
Oh, awesome.
Floors. Breaking a final bit of rock for the rest of the parking area down below.
And so the electrician one should be look a little better. We're gonna wrap it maybe next week. Fortunately, the windows are special windows and they're taking 6 to 8 weeks, so. Anyway, the grant is very welcome.
Might offset some of the delays in construction.
There's no delays, it's just,
No, I mean, it's taking way longer than you planned.
oh, once we started building, no,
Oh, okay.
it's getting to that point.
That's what she's saying.
I mean, the school got into trouble because it took so long to jump through the hoops, then the costs go up.
Yeah. And it's, honestly, it's not all the city, it's well, supposedly.
It happens.
Anyway. I think by the 5 minute clock, and Steve has 2 minutes and 14 seconds.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot, Russ. Yeah, that's great news. A lot of money to the town from the state, so.
Yeah, it's basically the total project's over 2 million, $2.5 million.
Well, you already shared some of your foreign items that already, or what was, but it wasn't on the agenda. Either. Yes.
No, it's been pretty busy, so. Didn't have a lot of time to think about how to populate the meetings, but having a short meeting, we've had a lot of long meetings. So a short one, while the weather's nice, I'm certainly will.
Here's some short one.
Anybody going to the Citizens Day?
And I'm gonna be there, manning a booth. Okay, city booth. Running vendors.
That's not this Saturday, but next. The one at McCormick Park where they make burgers and hot dogs.
We're gonna have a little selfie station too. Yeah, take the picture.
And sometimes there's Dutch Brothers.
Okay, well.
We're friends this weekend.
That's.
Oh.
Not going yet.
So we have a vacancy now.
Yeah, I was, right, I was gonna talk.
We could talk about this at the next meeting, what timeline, but we gotta talk about our interview committee. We can wait till next time, or you know, who wants to be on that?
I'm always happy to do that, so.
I'll be on it.
There you go.
We're up to 3, right?
Yeah, but two plus our counselor, as long as everybody's cool with that.
That's interesting.
And at some point there, we need to talk about the chair, vice chair. Positions.
Yes, we should put that on the agenda for next time. Since, yeah, good point.
Both. Yes.
In the last semi-annual report we gave, we said, hey, we're not gonna have interviews again. Sorry. But that's how it goes.
Now we can adjourn.
Hi, Russ, online.
Hi, Russ. Thank you.
Hey, Russ, are you on a boat?
That's what I
I
wondered.
am.
It looks
It was
great.
like
It looks sunny.
on the bridge.
It's, I mean, that story, it rained all day today. We're on land right now,
Oh, okay.
at the boat out of the water.
Fun. Hopefully you're enjoying it.
And it's a lot of work right now, but yeah, it's not too bad.
All
I've
right.
been thinking about what.
See you next
we
month.
could put on your